Again, my name is Bonnie McMahon. I'm Vice President of Sales here at Evosys, and today's topic is moving Taleo to Oracle Cloud Recruiting efficiently. So that being said, as I mentioned before, you are mute by design. There's many of you on the line today, so we're trying to minimize the background noise, but we certainly want to hear from you. So if you have any questions, please use the question icon on your toolbar. So today's agenda, we're going to go ahead and talk a little bit about Evosys, because I want to make sure you guys are all educated on our background with Taleo and Oracle Cloud Recruiting. And then we're going to be talking about signs that you may be ready to transition onto a newer talent acquisition platform. And then we'll talk about the program we've designed specifically for our Taleo customers to migrate easily over
can anyone hear me?
Hi, Calvin, we hear you fine. And then we're going to talk about some key features of the Oracle Cloud Recruiting, and then we'll talk about next steps. So here's a little bit about Evosys. So I think a lot of times when we talk about vendors to help you migrate over to any cloud product, it's important for everyone to understand the background of your implementer.
Oh.
So we're actually over 1,000 cloud customers to date. We operate in over 30 countries around the globe, and we have about 1,500 consultants, experienced consultants. And you'll see here, we put up some slides, some numbers here on Oracle HCM cloud customers. And you'll see we have well over 740 Taleo clients that we've serviced throughout the years. And that may raise a little red flag to some of you on the line, and that's only because Calvin and I both started a company called Migrate Consulting, where Taleo was our only focus. Matter of fact, we brought these 740 customers over to Evosys, and then we've since grew out our practice to include HCM as well as the other talent modules. So what you'll see is we'll also have a background. Now that we're Evosys, we have a very strong background in EBS, PeopleSoft, and Oracle HCM. And we're super proud of that little award down there in the left-hand corner, HCM Global Partner of the Year last year. And I see some of our new customers on the line, so I want to thank you all for joining today. So why do customers pick Evosys? We go ahead, we're super proud to brag, right? And that's kind of my job as a sales professional, is to talk about our credentials and our consultants. And our consultants are certainly the reason why we're successful here at Evosys. Like I said, we've actually have domain expertise as well as referenceable and happy customers. And we have we're known for not only our expertise, but our expertise in rescuing projects and our multi-pillar experience. And you can see we're actually, and another reason why I like to brag here is we've actually done the most number of Oracle Cloud Recruiting projects across the globe. And we're one of Oracle's top partners for this. So let's talk about some signs before we get started here. Okay, maybe it's time for you guys to transition over to the Oracle Cloud Recruiting module. Maybe you've had Taleo for over 5 years. And when I say 5 years, that's okay, but maybe you haven't been taking the quarterly updates. That product is updated quarterly, much like all the Oracle Cloud products, and you have some new functionality that you might be missing out on. So trouble identifying top internal candidates is another reason that you may want to consider transitioning over to Oracle Cloud Recruiting. If you're finding that process to be a little not efficient or unable to do that easily, then Oracle Cloud Recruiting would be for you. And perhaps you are maybe in an organization who embraces change in technology and you'd want to use more digital assistance or maybe some RPA, the robotic process automation. Maybe there's parts of your recruitment cycle that could be very easily automated, and you could take some commonly questions or functions off of the recruiter's plate and put them onto a digital assistant and use that recruiter for more strategic initiatives. Or maybe, and this is a big one for our Taleo customers, maybe you'd really like the ability to use marketing campaigns in your recruitment efforts. That is something that Oracle Cloud Recruiting does super well. And the other, another big reason why our folks have, our customers have considered Oracle Cloud Recruiting is the integration between Taleo and your HRIS system. Those integrations, as you know, can be tough sometimes to maintain, especially when the product is updated quarterly. And social recruiting, that's a big part of our jobs now as recruiters, is to go out onto social networks and look for candidates and maintain relationships with top candidates out in the marketplace. Oracle Cloud Recruiting will do that nicely for you. And here's another one, SMS or texting. Perhaps everyone here on the line, if you have Taleo, you've asked us about texting. And so Oracle Cloud Recruiting is a great answer to that, as well as connecting with LinkedIn. So I'm going to pause here, and I want to go ahead and introduce my colleague, Calvin Hare. As I mentioned, Calvin and I both worked at Taleo for many years, and then we worked at Oracle. He's got over 12 years of experience with Oracle HCM products and has worked on some of the bigger Taleo implementations back when we were at Taleo. So, Calvin, are you there now?
I am, yes. Can you guys hear me?
We can. Hey, thank you.
Excellent. Yeah, my phone cut out right when it started. I don't know what happened, but
we're anyway. Happy to have you.
Thank you. Yeah, technology sometimes. Anyway, thanks, guys. Appreciate everybody's time today. And Bonnie, thanks for that introduction. I wanted to talk a little bit about, Evosys and our experience, and basically when you're looking for an implementation partner to transform or to transition you from one application to another, it's critical that that partner understands both systems. And it's not just a knowledge of the receiving system, not just a knowledge of OCR, but it's also a knowledge of where you're coming from. And we as Evosys, of course, bring that knowledge to the table with many, many years of experience in the Taleo applications. Obviously, my experience, as Bonnie mentioned, I've been doing it 12, 13 years now, over 100 implementation projects of Taleo. And we feel that's critical when you're looking to do an implementation. And that experience, we've work that into a methodology that we call our glide methodology. And we've been able to take our knowledge of Taleo as well as our knowledge of Oracle Cloud Recruiting and put together an efficient methodology that allows customers to transition from their current Taleo applications to OCR in a very effective and efficient manner. As any implementation, it's not about necessarily time, even though this methodology allows us to do that in a very efficient time frame. But it's also about quality. It's about the knowledge of the applications and about the innovation you can bring to the table as you're going through these implementations. With that said, let's talk about our glide methodology. We've narrowed it down, or we've kind of boiled it down into basically 3 primary steps, these first 3, and then support services at the end. Basically, the methodology starts with looking at your current systems and leveraging our knowledge to perform an assessment of what you're doing in that system, looking at that information in depth to understand not only its current fit to best practices, as well as its fit into ORC and where the transitions need to take place. Obviously, that I'm going to go into more detail on each one of these as we go to a few further slides. But that's kind of what that process is about. All that information gleaned out of that assessment then moves forward and plays into the next step, which is really the design and leveraging our knowledge of both systems, our knowledge of best practices, our experience to help you design an implementation, a system that is going to meet your requirements and make you successful. I've been doing this a long time, as Bonnie mentioned, and for me, it's as an implementation partner, it's always about the success of the customer. We're not just there to, to check the boxes and put in a system. We're there to make sure that that system meets the needs of the customer and to, make that customer successful. And that's, a large part of what we do. And this advisory services, this second part of this methodology is focused around that and understanding how to design and how to make that system meet those requirements. Thirdly is the actual implementation itself. Once we've gained that knowledge, then we have the methodology that we call our glide to support that rapid implementation using a set of toolkits, using a pre-configuration, using our knowledge, again, to make that as efficient and effective as possible. Finally, at the end, again, it's about success. We want to make sure that you are equipped for success, that not only does it work at the time we implement it, but that you're also equipped to support that application. Obviously, some of that support comes with any implementation, but you know, we have other support areas to make sure that if you need extended support, and we'll dive into those in a little more detail.
So I'll remind everybody, if you have any questions as we go here, please use the question icon on your toolbar or even the chat, whichever one you feel more comfortable with, and we'll go from there.
All right, great. With that said, let's dive into each one of these steps a little further. First, the assessment step. And let's go ahead and hit that button. We'll show all the areas. Again, this is a critical part of the process. Is taking the time to look, and the knowledge to look at your current configuration and glean as much information from that as possible. We do this with every implementation. Obviously, you don't want to come in and just start from scratch. You want to understand what's happening today, what the current environment is, how to make this, how to make this successful. And when you're looking at the applications, you want to understand what the differences are. So as you get into the design of the application, what needs to happen to transform from one to the other. As part of that, these are a lot of the areas that we look at as part of this assessment. We obviously look at your current Taleo configuration. We look at that. Does it even fit best practices today? Where are there gaps? And if your system hasn't been looked at for a few years, there's probably things that could be done better in that. So we make sure we address those as we move forward. We're not looking to just lift and shift and bring over current problems into the new system. But we can certainly highlight those and get upfront knowledge of those as we do this assessment. And then those all play into the design of the new system. We look at process bottlenecks. What are you having to do to work around things today? We want to make sure we address those in the new application. As part of this assessment, we'll also, it's not just looking, it's also asking questions. What are you having challenges with today? And those we make sure that we address those in the new application. Are there clicks happening in the system that are what I call unactionable? A lot of times there'll be statuses or OCR, it's phases and states. There'll be things in there to track information that are not necessarily actionable. Or what are you doing with that information? We ask those tough questions, and if there's not a good answer, well, why were we making that click? What are we doing with it? Then that's something that probably we need to leave out of the design. Integrations, data migration, that's a huge part of it as well. We need to understand what data is in your current system. How many candidates, how many requisitions, what are we looking at? What do you feel good about from a data perspective? Is it clean? Are there duplicates? So we know that information from this assessment looking at your system, and that better equips us then as we use our toolkits to understand what data and how we're going to need to transform and bring that over. Are there any manual processes? This again plays into kind of workarounds, and how does it fit with OCR? It's a little different application. It's every ATS system is different. OCR is a great one. It's based on the latest and greatest world-class design. But we want to make sure that what you're doing in Taleo, what do we need to do to accomplish that or make it better as we go to Oracle Cloud Recruiting. And then finally, when we're looking at this, again, we base a lot of stuff on success. So as we're looking at this, we want to make sure that we do something that's measurable, that we know current state, we know where we're at, we know their challenges, and then we want to make sure that we improve on those. So if we go to the next slide, just a couple examples of those. These are some common recruiting HR analytics. Probably not going to set each one of these up. This is a lot. But what we're going to do is we're going to target a few of these, and especially, based on the individual customer, there's probably an understanding of which ones of these you're having challenges. Are you having challenge with time to fill or time to hire? Your bottlenecks there. What about productivity? What about, and you're not really sure your sourcing channel effectiveness, hiring manager satisfaction. So what we'd like to do, we always want to select some of these, get a baseline, understand where you are today on it, and then as we move through the implementation, and certainly as we end, and moving forward from that, to make sure that those numbers are improved, make sure that we're gaining that success that's expected. All right, next we have our second part of that block, which is the enhancements and advisory services. This is where our consulting knowledge, we've used that assessment, we've gained the knowledge of your current system, we know how it fits. Now we take that knowledge and we advise you. And this first block, you've already seen the slide with how many OCR implementations we've done. We are the #1 partner. We have the most experience implementing this. We're also, I think, the leading Taleo implementer as well. So our experience on both of those systems is one of the key things that plays into our ability to deliver this glide methodology and to give you the most efficient and effective, transformation from one to the other. All that, we look at what are the leading best practices. Make sure that we incorporate those into the system. We're looking to transform versus lift and shift. I mean, there might be particular implementations where you're driven by a timeline or something, and we are flexible, where a customer may want to just say, hey, I got to get off a contract, I got to do something, let's just bring this over. But we want to make sure that we, even in those situations, we make the product as best as it can be and leverage as much functionality, as much best practice, even though we're not maybe transforming all the underlying processes. We want to make sure that we've done the best job, with the system as possible. And that all plays into this because we know both systems now. We're going to set up streamlined processes. Again, those unactionable clicks, we don't want those. We want to make sure, even on the candidate side, that's huge today. I mean, the candidate experience used to, I've been implementing these for many years, and I always say, when we first started this back in 07, 08, the industry was very different. It was a recession. It was not a candidate's market back then. We could put a 45-minute application in front of a candidate and they'd fill it out because they didn't have a choice. They needed to get in the system. That's changed over the years, and I've seen it change even over the last couple of years. It's now down to the, if you don't have a 2 to 3 minute application that a candidate can fill out on a mobile device while sipping a latte on the one hand and using one finger on their mobile device, then you're probably losing candidates. And so as we're going into these, we look at how do we create that streamlined, efficient experience, and we bring that knowledge to make sure that you're capturing the information you need for recruiting and recruiting effectiveness, but not creating experience on either the recruiting or the hiring manager, or specifically the candidate experience that that is not efficient. And we also look, the system comes out of the box with so much functionality. We configure it, we make it work. There's customization, enhancements capability too, but we look to not do that only as required, because that creates, again, complications as we go forward. So part of our methodology is keep it simple and keep it efficient, leveraging our knowledge to provide that design that accomplishes your goals. Okay, I think that that's this block, and this is huge. This is really where the system is designed, and in all my years of implementation, the critical, it's always critical that you spend the more time you spend in the analysis and design and planning phase of a project, the more successful it's going to be at the end. You can't sell that short. You can't just say, all right, let's do a quick design and then get it in. And you need the experience, you need the knowledge as you're going through that to create the best possible system. All right, next we'll take these two blocks. We've assessed the system, we've created the design. Now we go into the implementation. We go to the next slide. We'll probably have to build those block boxes again. and we look at our glide methodology. What makes that up? I mean, it's based on an accelerated implementation. We, depending on the customer needs, we do these implementations in about 3 to 5 months. All that's driven by complexity, scope, number of portals, number of workflows, things like that, and obviously from a resource availability on the customer side. But we've seen these implementations, we've been able to do them, we've been able to deliver these to the customer within 3 months, on an accelerated program. And what it enables us to do that is this methodology, the information that we've gleaned that plays into the design, and that allows us to accelerate, through this methodology process. We've built toolkits related to that because we know the data structures within Taleo. We know the data structures within OCR. So we know what that data needs to look like on both ends. So we have those pre-built templates, that toolkit. And what we need to do then, we just need to address the gaps and look at the individual customer specific fields and how those bring in. But we've got, a huge part of that already solved going into there. Same thing from a configuration. We know how the configurations match up between the systems. We know how the workflows migrate over, steps and statuses to phases and states. So again, we have that information, and then we need to focus on, the customer specific items, the gaps between what you're doing today and what you want to do, and fill those in. But, you've got the heavy lifting, a lot of it already done. And then that bottom block, that best practice pre-configuration, this is huge for us, and I've been doing this for years, and that is a differentiator when you're looking at implementation partners, is we come to the table with the system already pre-configured. We're not looking to just come and say, all right, what do you want to do? Let's talk about it. We've taken our time to assess, gain the knowledge of your system. We've created a design, and then we actually come into those, sessions with, all right, we're going to, based on our knowledge, we're going to actually pre-configure this system with best practice information. It's not completely done. I'm not saying this is a done system, but we're going to start. So what you're going to see from the beginning is going to be a system that is already brought to life to a certain extent from a best practice pre-configuration. Then again, we're looking at, the gaps, and we're looking at the exceptions, between what's there as a framework and then what you need it to be, instead of starting from scratch and looking at everything. What allows us to do this, the final block, I mean, we are experts. We have the experience in these. We're the leading implementer in both of these systems, and that knowledge is critical, to an effective and efficient implementation.
I think that brings up a good point, Calvin. I think it's super important, especially if you're moving off of Taleo and you've owned it for years. You need to work with a partner who understands Taleo and understands how your processes are already configured, right? So I think that lends itself to being a little bit more efficient when you're adopting Oracle Cloud Recruiting.
Absolutely key. Yeah, I mean, it's not that you can get it implemented, but you're losing a key. A key benefit and a key, to a head start, basically, if you're trying to implement without, knowledge of the current product that you're on, especially when it comes to data migration and configuration differences. Good point, Bonnie. All right. Finally, at this point, we've taken you through the 3 major steps. The system is implemented, running like a well-oiled machine. Everything's good. We want to make sure it stays that way. So obviously, as part of any implementation, we don't just turn it on and leave you. We have some post-live support that's included in there. We make sure that the system's working. We make sure that you understand how to support it, and that's there without saying. But the rest of this, we want just to make sure that everyone understands. We have a lot of other support options. Again, we have a huge team, experienced team. We have remote system administrators. We have, analysts, full managed services staff augmentation. What a lot of customers will do is that middle block. It's like, well, we're not really comfortable. We've allocated some resources. They've been involved in the implementation. They feel fairly comfortable, but we want to make sure we have some support, for the next 3 months, 6 months. And so we, we talk to them about a short-term support. How many, how many resources do we need to pull up for that? What needs to be available? And no matter, we support around the globe. So if it's a 24/7 organization like a hospital or a global type of organization that has operations all around the globe, we have resources that can support no matter what the time zone is. And so as we go through this, we make sure that at the end that that you're supported. If you need extra support, it's there. And it's, we structure it for customer needs. It's not just set in stone. Whatever you need, we can, we can provide a plan around that. But the most important thing is we need you to be successful. Make sure you're supported, that when the next upgrade comes, or if you're having an issue with the system, that you have someone to go to, and you have, have knowledge necessary, the needed knowledge to actually support that.
I think that's a good point, Calvin. I think, whenever any company, deploys a new software system, it's important to have someone there on the back end, even if it's a simple question, or maybe you want to change your process along the way. It's so important to have someone there who's got your back, as they say, right?
Yeah, and just to use a couple of examples about that, I mean, this is critical, and that's a good point, Bonnie. I want to emphasize a little more. Even we've, with our experience, we've been pulled into several type of implementations where, maybe another implementer has put in a system, or there's been a company that's installed and they didn't, leverage any kind of support. It was working for a while, but then they didn't take upgrades, or they didn't have anybody to support the system, and it started to break. We've seen several instances like that just in the last couple of years, where Evosys has been pulled in. It's like, hey, we have a customer that's that's struggling, and we've come in, and a lot of times it's a support issue. It's not a design issue from the it's not a design or implementation issue. It's just that they haven't maintained the system, haven't kept it up and running. So, again, as part of success, the system's going to work when you first put it in, but no system is static forever. No processes, no company is static. So you have to make sure that it is supported, and we'll work with you to make sure that you have that in place, because we don't want to come back 6 months, 12 months, and have have a problem that could have been averted through support.
Good point. Good point.
All right.
Okay.
I think this is a slide that based on some supported adoption paths. There are options. The first one there is the recommended one to do a full adoption, and that's really what we don't want to see move away from. Oracle discourages anything but a full adoption based on a particular company need. If there's a single unit that needs to be done, they might support that, but certainly won't support any kind of a a joint process type option. So when you're looking to do this, you really want to look at taking your entire organization over to the one tool if able, and if not, look at that second middle option as a potential, but we'll try to discourage that.
Okay.
All right. Okay. What we wanted to do now is, like we talked about in the agenda, is if for those that maybe have not seen the application, obviously any change of systems, any transition is a big step, and so the key question is why do you why would you want to do it? And I know Bonnie at front covered maybe reasons to look at transitioning from the Taleo systems. What we wanted to cover now is what are the top reasons that that we see customers actually moving off of their systems and going to ORC. And so I'm not going to cover this in detail.
Yeah, let's pause for a minute. I'm going to ask the audience here, can everyone show their hand if you've actually seen Oracle Cloud Recruiting yet? I'm curious how many people on the line. We have a fairly big group on today, so I'm curious if you've seen how many people have actually seen the product? so far? There's a little raise your hand icon on the toolbar. Oh, there's a 1, there's 2. Oh yeah, we've got quite a few people on that actually have seen Oracle Cloud Recruiting. That's awesome. That's awesome. So some of this may sound familiar to you as we kind of walk through these, so that Kelvin, you can, I didn't mean to interrupt, I apologize, but also
no, I think that's a good question to understand how
yeah.
many have seen it. So, you know, it is a really dynamic, really exciting application. So those of you that have had an opportunity to see it, and I'm sure you liked it. But we're going to focus on here. Again, I'm not going to dive into each one of these in detail and belabor you with, you know, a lot of detailed conversation. But what I wanted to point out is really some of the key areas that are, you know, the customers are looking for, and you know, top reasons that they're moving, you know, from Taleo into OCR. First and foremost.
Yeah, and wait a minute, Kelvin. I'm going to tell everyone, also use the question icon on your toolbar if you have any questions on any of these as they come up. We're happy to take those questions.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. All right, cool. Well, first and foremost, number one there, this is a native module of Oracle's cloud. And that, you know, I can't say that any stronger, I guess, and that is really the key reason on why you'd want to transition over. It eliminates integrations. So right now, if you're on a Taleo system, you're likely integrated to an HR system. You have data passing back and forth. There's probably delays in that data. There's probably errors possibly that you know, that happen in that data. With OCR, that's not the case. I mean, you're directly connected to the Oracle Cloud HR system. The jobs that you're seeing in OCR are the job table in the you know, in the native HR module. The employees come in as candidates, so you know, the employees in there, that you can leverage the talent profiles of those employees. And you know, one of these talks to adaptive intelligence and how it will actually go in and mine the data out of those talent profiles and present you know, present actual candidate matches that you normally wouldn't have seen, and you know, unless you'd searched it yourself. So that's just you know, it's a huge piece of why you would want to look at this, is to eliminate those integrations and be directly connected with your, you know, your core source of record on all HR information. Secondly, I mentioned the importance of the candidate experience early on, and that's something, you know, that I've seen in the industry, like I said, over the years, gain more and more importance, and probably the number one piece of recruiting systems right now that drives your candidate volume and the quality of the candidates you get is what's that experience. So, you know, that can't be discounted. It has to be engaging. It has to be efficient. And, you know, this is a very industry leading application in that it is created for the latest and greatest world-class candidate experience. Part of what plays into that are some of these other things, like it has a deferred registration. That's huge. I mean, over the year, and this is something I've seen only probably over the last 2 or 3 years with so much emphasis, is, you know, it's come to the attention of companies that, you know, even having a candidate have to register, you're used to registering in most web applications. You know, you got to create a password. When it comes to recruiting, that's a process that, well, maybe I'm not ready to put in an application yet. I don't want to set up an account. You know, I just want to apply as quickly as possible. So providing that, you know, that seamless registration where they just put an email address and then they're right in the application, that is critical. And OCR is built around that, even from the beginning, that you know, only an email is needed to start that application and get right into the, you know, the process for providing and applying to those jobs. Mobile responsiveness. Optimization used to be the mobile solution. That is creating a separate application, sensing that the mobile device, and then you put up an application that's, you know, works better on a mobile device, but it's usually lacking functionality. That's just not best practice anymore. I know from my experience, I used to get that with Delta. Is you know, if I'm on my mobile phone and bring up the mobile application, I couldn't do what I wanted, so I'd have to click the link that says view full website, and you know, those mobile optimized, it's just not the way, you know, the industry is going right now. This application is 100% mobile responsive. That means it's all HTML5. No matter what device you're in, you're seeing the same application. Whether you portrait, landscape, it's going to morph and change and take advantage of all the real estate on the screen that's available. And that carries through not just from the candidate experience, from also from the recruiter, hiring manager experience. No need for a mobile app, doesn't matter what device. So it basically takes that restriction out of the equation. Also, from a candidate, you know, engaging candidate experience is the ability to do your multiple design templates and branding, multimedia support. Those are all things that this application offers that that flows into that candidate experience. And then finally, number 11 there, the chatbot applications. The ability to interact with the system via chatbot. And I've got some slides that can show you just a little bit about that, but obviously, you know, OCR supports that. The candidate can get in, ask questions. It'll lead them through that process, and then it will actually, you know, present jobs, let them apply through there as well. Finally, or another area that Taleo customers will appreciate this, and one of the reasons for driving is reporting. Reporting is key, and in the Taleo applications, some of those, like Enterprise, has a it has an OBI, it has the business intelligence interface, but it's only limited to the Taleo databases. With this, again, back to number one, as a native module, it allows reporting through that same business intelligence analytics across the organization. So you can not only report, comes out of the box with a lot of dashboards, a lot of reports already built, but you can use that to report across different modules and leverage those in the same report, which you just cannot do in other ATS systems. They're not part of a native module. SMS support, that's another one that's part of a candidate experience, and that's something like mobile responsiveness and deferred registration that's been huge initiatives over the last few years to be able to communicate with the candidates through SMS, because that's how candidates communicate, especially the millennials, the younger candidates that are out there. That's how they communicate. So we need to make sure that's supported, and that is supported by the application. I think that's a good overview. I'm not going to dive into any one of those anymore. I do have a few supporting slides just to show you some key features. So if we want to go ahead to the next one. A little bit on the candidate experience. These are some screenshots just to kind of give you a feeling for how it can look. Different branding. You can have very rich videos in there, images, easy access to social media. The search is a Google-like search, so they don't have to click a whole bunch of drop-downs to do an effective search. They can basically just start typing in keywords, and then it will, use those keywords as this second screenshot shows to suggest, suggest search results and let them easily go through that. Again, email address is all that's needed to supply, no registration. Also, from a CRM perspective, this application actually leverages the candidate's browsing history to help present and proactively present information about jobs and opportunities. It's not just the candidate going in and setting preferences. This system has true, CRM functionality built into it, where it can use that history to, to provide the candidate opportunities. If we go to the next slide. We'll talk a little bit more about the chat bot. This is just a simple example of what you can do. And this is, the chat bot will pop up. They click the little icon for it. We've all used chat bots in digital assistants. And then you just type, some people have fun with them. But with this, I mean, you basically type in, hey, do you need any help? That's what the chat bot says. And the candidate can put in things like, well, can I be, would you consider a junior candidate? What are career opportunities? And these are just examples of what, these are actual screenshots from the chatbot to see what it comes up with. It can actually present career development paths. And then as you take it further, you can put in job, you can put in job information, and it'll actually put in the jobs. It'll have the job descriptions, even the video, the images will show up there, and then you can actually take the application and go through the application from that digital assistant as well. And of course, it works perfectly well on a phone. That's that's where we use it a lot. All right. Next slide, we're going to talk about the hiring manager experience. A lot of times the hiring manager experience isn't primary in the consideration, and that's again, that's not best practice. Leveraging the hiring managers in applicant tracking is critical. So that hiring manager experience and making that as efficient and accurate as possible, is key. And these are just a few examples of what the hiring manager portal within this application provides. It has the ability, they access their Oracle Cloud system. They can go in and they can see their team, all their existing team. Then they go into hiring and they can see all the candidates that are on their requisitions. They can see their requisitions. Then they can click into those requisitions like we see in these screenshots. They can view the details of each requisition, see how many candidates are in there, and then they can actually go into the candidates and see from a graphical type display. And that's one of the things the application focuses on, is putting information in a graphical display so they don't have to wade through a lot of text. This is just an example on that of an employment timeline. When you're looking at employment, even on a resume, as a hiring manager, you're like, all right, where do they work? Where are the gaps? What's important? This lays it out in a graph so they can easily see it, and makes the process of sorting through those candidates much more efficient. Then we move to the new hire. Again, I'm going through this, and we'll leave some time for questions. We just got a couple more slides. If we'll go to the next one. From the new hire perspective, don't want to leave off the onboarding functionality. Onboarding is key as well. Once you've selected that candidate, part of the experience is getting them through the onboarding process as efficiently as possible and minimizing any manual steps. I'm sure most of you are leveraging onboarding out of the Taleo applications, which is they're good processes, they're good applications. This one combines it all. Again, it's directly into your HR. When they're putting information in the form, it's going directly into the HR system. Again, there's no integrations. When they're filling out their personal information form, they're updating their hire information. They're providing that information directly into the system. So there's no lag in that getting where it needs to be. The system supports both pre-boarding and new hire. Like we see here, before their first day, there's some things that they need to do. Those tiles will be there for them to do, prior to the hire date. Then on their first day, once they've gone through there, then there'll be additional steps you can present for them. Things like, verifying the personal details, just like I said, before the information is finalized in the HR system. Looking at benefits information, completing a survey. Obviously, you're interested in feedback. You're interested in constant improvement. So in order to do that, you need to understand, how the candidates feel about that process. So a survey can be, kicked out at a 30, 60-day period, and then you can use those results to help improve the system, even more. And then these tasks are all, can be automated. It's not manual. Everything, it will trigger off of other prerequisites once they finish something else. You can design that process to be very efficient and with no manual intervention needed. That's a brief overview. Obviously, we'd love to, if anybody's interested, we can provide demos, look at more in the depth in the system, but that's, those are the various experiences. This is just an example of the recruiting that comes out of the box. When you're looking at source analytics, you might be looking at one kind of little source, graph today. This provides you various graphical displays of your sources. The source tracking, top 10 candidate sources, top 10 job application sources, and then looking at the bar graphs as far as drilling down into the various stages, the candidates that make it into the stages, where are they coming from? And of course, these graphs, you hover over one of the colored areas, you can drill down into there, It's fully, fully supported to see the underlying detail. There's many more out of the box dashboards. I just wanted to put one example up there for you. As we go to the next one, well, I guess that's okay. Yeah, I think that's what we're going to show you from the application today. I'm going to turn it over now to Bonnie, and we'll address any questions and talk about some next steps. Thank you, Bonnie.
Thanks. Yeah, thank you, Calvin. We appreciate it. For sure. If you do have any questions that you wanted to address today, because I know we're getting close to the top of the hour, please use the question icon on the toolbar, and we'll take those as they come in. But for next steps, the next step is, if you haven't seen a product demo, let's give us a call. We're happy to give you a demo of the product and talk a little bit more about your particular recruiting process. And of course, we'd love to do an assessment with you. I think it's super important to understand how you're using Taleo today and how it will translate over to the Oracle Cloud Recruiting module. And we're happy to be set up that assessment as soon as possible. So I'm looking here to see questions if they come in. We do have one, of course. How long does an assessment usually take? That assessment really depends on what tool you're using today, whether you're using Taleo Enterprise Edition, Taleo Business Edition, and how complex your recruiting process is. So again, if you're using it globally, it could take a little bit longer than just if you're using it here in North America. Calvin, do you have like a time frame on assessment?
Yeah, for sure. I mean,
never
usually,
more.
yeah, usually it's not a long process. Back when we could travel, a lot of times we would spend a day on site with a customer and just go through it all at that point, and we come out of that with most of the information we need. Today, obviously, until we can travel again, I mean, it's probably takes 2 or 3 web sessions to get through there. But it's not an automated process. It's a process where we talk to key stakeholders and subject matter experts. We ask questions. We have them show them through the system, so we can glean that knowledge. But it's a fairly straightforward, and I think maybe 2 or 3, certainly less than a week of some targeted web sessions, we'd be able to get that information.
Excellent. And I think there's some other questions. Lila?
The other questions that have come through the question section have been responded to.
Okay. All right. Perfect then. I guess if we don't have any other questions, we'll just wrap it up since we're at the top of the hour. I appreciate everyone taking the time to log in this afternoon. We're happy, like I said, happy to schedule an assessment with you. And we'll be reaching out to see if you have any questions. Perhaps you have some additional questions after thinking about it after today's session. We'll look forward to connecting with you. Calvin, thank you so much for your help today. I appreciate it. And thank you all again for your time. Have a great afternoon.
Well, thanks everyone. Appreciated the time, and let us know if you want to look further.